If you keep waiting until you make more money before you start managing the money you already have, your life does not stay paused. Your habits keep growing. Your expenses keep adapting. Your standards keep rising. And by the time the bigger paycheck finally shows up, it usually gets swallowed by the same life that already felt too expensive before. That is the trap. Most people think they are waiting for more income, but what they are really doing is postponing discipline, handing the job to a future version of themselves who is supposed to magically become more responsible than the person they are today. Money does not work that way. A bigger paycheck does not automatically create financial freedom. It only makes your current habits more powerful. If your habits are clear, a bigger paycheck buys options. If your habits are chaotic, it buys a more expensive version of the same stress. The numbers show why this matters. In March of 2026, the U.S. personal saving rate was only 3.6% of after-tax income, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis. And in a bank rate survey from May of 2025, 60% of Americans said they were uncomfortable with their level of emergency savings, while only 46% had enough saved to cover 3 months of expenses. So this is not just about motivation. It is about the way normal life quietly absorbs money before the future ever gets a chance to use it. Today, we are going to follow one ordinary life. Not a millionaire, not a financial genius. Just Theo, a 27-year-old who keeps telling himself he will get serious about money once he earns more. Until 5 years go by, and he realizes the problem was never the paycheck. It was the waiting. At 27, Theo is not broke in the dramatic sense. He has a job at a mid-sized logistics company, the kind of title nobody outside the office really understands. He pays rent on a one-bedroom where the hot water takes a full minute to arrive. He has a laptop, a few subscriptions, and enough income to keep life moving. After tax, he brings home about $4,200 a month. It is not a huge income, especially in a city where rent takes a serious bite out of every paycheck. But from the outside, Theo looks like he is doing okay. And that is the problem. Because doing okay can quietly hide the fact that nothing is actually being built. Theo has about $1,100 in savings. His credit card balance floats between $1,800 and $2,400. And here is the part he tries not to think about. In early 2026, the average interest rate on commercial bank credit card plans sat around 21%, according to the Federal Reserve. On a balance like his, that means money is evaporating into interest before he buys a single new thing. His emergency fund is not really an emergency fund. It is more like money he hopes not to touch until life gives him a reason to touch it. Every month, he tells himself the same sentence: "When I make more money, I will get serious. When I get promoted, I will save more. When I switch jobs, I will invest. When I finally make real money, then I will become disciplined." And that promise feels reasonable because Theo can point to real problems. Rent is high. Groceries are up. His paycheck does not stretch as far as he thinks it should. So it feels logical to say, I cannot build wealth yet. I need more income first. But hidden inside that sentence is a dangerous belief that future income will fix present habits. For a while, that belief is comforting. It lets Theo delay the uncomfortable work. He does not have to track spending yet. He does not have to build a budget yet. He does not have to say no yet. Because the plan is simple. Make more money later. Become a different person later. The waiting loop does not feel like failure. It feels like patience. Theo is not saying he will never save. He is saying he will save later. He is not saying investing does not matter. He is saying it will matter more when he has more to invest. He is not saying debt is fine. He is saying it will be easier once his income goes up. That is what makes the loop so hard to see. It sounds responsible. But every month he waits, his habits keep voting. The second dinner out that week votes. The rideshare instead of the train votes. The subscription he forgot about votes. The impulse order at 11 p.m. votes. The slightly nicer apartment he cannot really afford votes. Every small decision becomes a quiet election about the kind of financial life Theo is building. And the votes are not going toward freedom. They are going toward comfort. Not bad comfort, not evil comfort, just ordinary comfort. The kind that makes the present feel easier while quietly making the future less flexible. Theo does not feel like he is making one big mistake. That would actually be easier to fix. He feels like he is making normal choices in a normal life. And in a way, he is. That is exactly why this trap is so common. Most people do not wreck their financial life with one giant decision. They drift into fragility through hundreds of small decisions that all feel completely understandable in the moment. Then one day, you look up and realize years have passed, your income rose, and somehow you still feel behind. 2 years later, Theo gets the exact thing he said he was waiting for. More money. He changes jobs and his take-home pay rises from about $4,200 a month to about $5,600. The number feels enormous at first. An extra $1,400 a month should change everything. And for a few weeks, it does. There is a specific morning he remembers. He gets the deposit notification, sees the new number, and just sits on the edge of his bed holding the phone a beat too long. He thinks, this is the beginning. This is when I finally save. This is when I become the kind of person who has a real plan. But the upgrade does not arrive alone. The new job is farther out, so the commute costs more. The coworkers go out more, so the social spending climbs. He dresses a little better because he wants to look like he belongs. Then the lease comes up. The old apartment suddenly feels like a chapter he has outgrown, and he moves somewhere nicer. None of it feels crazy. That is the phrase that quietly ruins people. The apartment is better. The clothes make sense. The dinners help him network. The new laptop is basically an investment. The trip is because he worked hard and deserved it. By the end of 6 months, the entire extra $1,400 has disappeared into a life that now costs more to maintain. Theo is making more money, but he is not becoming more free. That is the part most people miss. A raise does not automatically create a gap between what you earn and what you spend. If you do not deliberately protect that gap, your lifestyle will rush in and absorb it before your future ever gets a chance to use it. A higher income can create the illusion that everything is improving. And some things genuinely are. Theo lives in a nicer place, he eats better, he feels more confident in meetings. From the outside, he moved up. But inside his financial life, the structure has barely changed. He still does not track where the money goes. He still does not have a real emergency fund. He still pays the card down, then runs it back up. He still saves whatever is left over instead of deciding what has to be saved first. The income changed, the system did not. And when the system does not change, more money simply gives the old system more room to operate. This is why people can double their income and still feel stuck. The problem is not always the amount. Sometimes it is the total absence of a rule. No rule for saving first. No rule for what happens to a raise. No rule for the moment money finally gets easier. Without rules, emotions write the plan, and emotions are terrible financial planners. Stress says, buy comfort. Pride says, upgrade. Fear says, do not look at the numbers. And the future stays silent because the future never screams as loudly as the present. Theo thinks he needs more income to build freedom. What he actually needs is a system that protects freedom the moment income shows up. 5 years after he first promised himself he would get serious later, Theo is 32. He makes much more money now. After tax, he brings home around $7,200 a month. On paper, this is the number his younger self used to dream about. At 27, he would have thought, if I made that much, I would be completely fine. But Theo does not feel fine. It is a Tuesday night, almost midnight. He cannot sleep, so he is on his laptop in the dark, hunting for an old file, when he scrolls past it. A spreadsheet he made at 27. He opens it, half out of curiosity. And there is a note he typed to himself in a cell at the bottom. The kind of thing you write and forget. When I make more money, I will get serious. He just stares at it. Because he did make more money. He made the money he was waiting for. But the discipline did not arrive in the box with the bigger paycheck. He opens his banking app in the other tab and looks at the numbers he usually avoids at this hour. His emergency fund is still only about 1 month of expenses. He is not unusual in that. In the same bank rate survey, nearly 1 in 4 Americans had no emergency savings at all, and only 46% had enough to cover 3 months. Theo, on $7,200 a month, is still sitting inside the exact problem he assumed a higher income would solve for him. That note hits him harder than any bill ever has. The future version of himself did not become disciplined just because the paycheck got bigger. He was still him. Same avoidance, same emotional spending, same fear of opening the app at midnight, same quiet belief that one more raise would finally make it all easy. And he realizes the truth. He was not waiting for more money. He was waiting for money to change him. Money does not change you. Money reveals you. The real cost of waiting is not only the money he failed to save, it is the time he cannot get back. Run the simple version. If Theo had invested just $500 a month starting at 27, before he felt ready, that is $30,000 in contributions over 5 years, before a single dollar of growth. The bigger win is not even the balance. It is that he would have spent those 5 years training himself to live on less than he made. Instead, he spent 5 years training himself to do the opposite. And there is a second cost, one that does not show up on any statement. Self-trust. For 5 years, Theo quietly taught himself that he is the person who starts later, the person who waits for the next raise. The longer you live that way, the more normal it feels. Waiting stops being a phase and becomes part of your identity. That is the real danger. Eventually, the problem is no longer that you have not started. The problem is that you have become someone who can always find a reason not to start. Not enough income, bad timing, inflation, market uncertainty, need to wait until things finally settle down. But life rarely settles down long enough to hand you a perfect starting point. So if your plan requires perfect conditions, your plan may never actually begin. Theo does not fix his life by becoming extreme. He does not sell everything. He does not cut off his friends. He does not turn money into punishment. Because shame is not a financial strategy, and it never lasts. Instead, he builds one rule: start with the paycheck you have. Not the future paycheck, not the next promotion, not the perfect month. The paycheck that is hitting your account right now. He calls it the reset rule. Before any lifestyle upgrade, before any new subscription, before any emotional purchase, the first slice of every paycheck has to buy freedom. Stated plainly, the moment money lands, an automatic transfer moves 10% of it out before he can negotiate with himself. Some goes to emergency savings, some to investments, some to the credit card. The split shifts over time, but the principle never moves. Freedom gets paid first. Comfort gets paid last. And here is why he starts at 10 and not 30. Because a rule you actually follow beats a rule you admire and abandon. Then he adds a second rule, and this is the one that changes the trajectory of his entire future. The raise rule. Every time his income rises, at least half of the increase goes to savings, investing, or debt before his lifestyle is allowed to touch a cent of it. Now, a raise does not vanish on autopilot. A raise becomes fuel. A bonus becomes momentum. A better job becomes a chance to widen the gap between income and lifestyle, instead of just making life more expensive. Together, he calls it his 10 and 50 system. 10% off the top of every paycheck. 50% off the top of every raise. That is the whole thing. The first month feels boring, almost disappointing. Theo gets paid and the money moves on its own. 10% goes toward freedom before anything else can happen. Then life just continues. No fireworks. No transformation montage. No sudden feeling of being wealthy. Just slightly less money sitting in the account to spend. This is exactly where most people quit. Not because the plan is complicated, but because the first stage of financial freedom does not feel like freedom. It feels like restriction. The reward is invisible at first. Nobody compliments discipline. Nobody claps because you skipped takeout. Nobody knows you chose the cheaper apartment so your future self could breathe. But Theo keeps going. Because now he understands the point is not to feel rich today. The point is to stop sacrificing every future version of himself for today's mood. Month 2 feels easier. Month 3 feels less strange. By month 6, he no longer has to argue with himself every payday. The system starts carrying him on the days motivation is gone. That is when it clicks. Systems beat intentions. Intentions depend on how you feel. Systems run even when you feel like garbage. 1 year later, Theo gets another raise. The old version of him would have instantly upgraded something. A nicer apartment, a car, a trip to prove the year was worth it. This time, Theo pauses. The raise gives him an extra $900 a month after tax. Before a dollar of it touches his lifestyle, he runs the rule. Half goes straight to freedom, emergency fund, investments, debt. The other half is allowed to improve his life, slowly and on purpose, without pretending that every dollar of new income has to instantly become a new bill. For the first time, a raise does exactly what Theo always imagined a raise would do. It makes him safer. Not just more comfortable, safer. His emergency fund grows from 1 month to 3, then 4. The credit card balance stops coming back. His investments finally get big enough that he genuinely cares about them. The anxiety is not gone, but it is quieter, because every single month he is buying back a little more control. That is what he was missing the whole time. Not income, control. Over time, Theo starts to redefine what enough even means. Before, enough was always a number out in the future. A bigger salary, a nicer place, a version of life where discipline would somehow finally feel easy. Now it means something different. Enough means his lifestyle does not consume every raise. Enough means his future gets paid before his ego. Enough means he can upgrade his life slowly, on purpose, without turning every improvement into a permanent obligation. That is financial maturity. Not never spending, not never enjoying. It is knowing the difference between using money to genuinely improve your life and using money to avoid being honest about your life. Theo still buys nice things. He still travels. But the order flipped. Before, comfort came first, and freedom got the leftovers. Now freedom comes first, and comfort has to fit inside the life that remains. That one reversal changes the entire direction of his future. A few years later, Theo's life does not look dramatically different to most people. He is not driving a supercar. He is not posting luxury vacations every month. He is not trying to look like the richest person in the room. But his life feels different from the inside. He has 6 months of expenses saved. His debt is manageable. His investments grow quietly in the background. He does not panic before payday, and he does not avoid his banking app at midnight anymore. The biggest change is not even financial. It is emotional. Theo trusts himself now. That is what the waiting had actually stolen. Not just money. Self-trust. Every single time he promised himself he would start later, and then did not, he quietly taught himself not to believe his own word. Now the opposite is happening. Every paycheck where he follows the rule rebuilds a little of that trust. Theo does not feel finished, but he no longer feels like his entire future is hostage to one magical income jump that will finally fix him. He stopped waiting for money to change him. He changed how he handles money. The real lesson is not that income does not matter. Income matters enormously. It creates options, speeds up debt payoff, and opens doors that low income keeps locked. But more income is not a substitute for a financial system. More income without a system just becomes more spending, more comparison, more bills, and very often the exact same anxiety in a more expensive room. That is why waiting is so dangerous. It feels harmless, but while you wait, your habits are still forming, your lifestyle is still adapting, and your identity is still quietly attaching itself to a certain level of comfort. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes to use future income any differently than you use it now. Remember the numbers. A 3.6% national saving rate. 60% of Americans uncomfortable with their emergency savings. Nearly 1 in 4 with no emergency savings at all. Those are not just stories about people who earn too little. Many people earn more than they used to, but their system never changed. So do not wait until you make more money to become the kind of person who can handle money. Become that person now, with the paycheck you already have, even if the amount is small, especially if the amount is small, because small money is where you learn the big habits. So if you are waiting until you make more money before you start saving, investing, or building a real financial plan, hold on to this one idea. A bigger paycheck will not automatically save you. It will only amplify the habits you already have. If you build the habit now, future income becomes fuel. If you avoid it now, future income just becomes another excuse to upgrade the stress. Start with the paycheck you have. Pay freedom first. Protect at least half of every raise. Build the system before the big money ever arrives. Because the goal was never to wait for some future version of yourself to magically become disciplined. The goal is to become that person before the money gets bigger. So here is the one thing I want you to do right now, before this feeling fades. Do not just comment a word. Comment the number you are going to automate out of your next paycheck. 5%? 10? Whatever is real for you. Because a number you say out loud is a number you are far more likely to actually move. And if you want more cinematic breakdowns about money psychology and how ordinary people quietly build freedom, subscribe to Theo Finance. Because the biggest financial mistake is not earning too little, it is waiting too long to begin.